Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our STS-130 post-launch news conference. We're all very excited to be here today and share the success of the launch story. And with us, we have NASA's Associate Administrator for Space Operations, Mr. Bill Gerstenmaier.
Good morning.
The European Space Agency Director General, Jean-Jacques Dordain.
Good morning.
Space Shuttle Launch Integration Manager and Chairman of the Pre-Launch Mission Management Team, Mike Moses.
Morning.
And Space Shuttle Launch Director, Mike Leinbach.
Good morning.
So we'll begin with some opening comments, and then we'll be happy to take your questions. Mr. Gerstenmaier?
Thanks, Mike. It's great to be here. What a beautiful launch we had this morning. It was just fantastic. The orbiter performed extremely well. We saw a couple little foam loss events during ascent. We saw one at about 2 minutes. We saw a piece of intertank stringer foam come off. It's probably about a 1/4 inch thick, maybe about a foot or so long, and it didn't appear to impact the orbiter, and we see no damage to the orbiter. It's something similar to what we've seen before. The good thing here is we actually got a chance to capture it pretty well on film, know exactly when it came off, got to see how it moved, so that'll be important data to us as we continue to work on the tank. And then we saw a couple other foam loss events around 8 minutes, and the experts will take a look at it over the days, and we may see some more things, but I think you'll see some things when you see the images. You'll see these areas that were missing. In fact, you could see the one area where it came off after the event. But again, extremely great performance for the orbiter. No problems at all. The tank did very well. And I think, again, like I always say, and I can't thank them enough, the team here in Florida that got this vehicle ready. To have a vehicle that performed this well during ascent enables us to go do a very complicated mission that we're about ready to go do. So I can't thank the Kennedy Space Center team and the processing team and the European Space Agency that gave us the node and the cupola, and to put all this together to get it into the shuttle launch and have this great event today and have such a flawless event is just phenomenal. So this is a great start to a very complicated mission. I look forward to the EVAs. I'll look forward to seeing the node installed on space station, and I'll look forward to seeing the first views out of the window of the cupola. So with that, I'll look forward to your questions, and I'll turn it over to Jean-Jacques for any opening remarks. Jean-Jacques?
Okay, thank you very much. And I would like first to thank NASA and in particular the crew here for that very beautiful launch. I must say a launch is always an important event, and that one was even more important because the shuttle is full of European hardware with Node 3 and the cupola. I must say that I would have preferred the launch to take place yesterday because the Columbus laboratory was launched on the 7th of February, so if we would have launched Node 3 and the cupola on the 7th of February, I would have declared the 7th of February an ESA day, but okay, we missed by 1 day. Maybe it will be the night between the 7th and the 8th. But thank you for NASA. Speaking of Columbus, as you know, Node 3 is how we pay the cost of the launch of Columbus, because this is the way we are cooperating with NASA. We are trying not to have any exchange of funds between NASA and ESA, and instead of paying the cost of the launch of Columbus, we are delivering Node 3 to NASA for paying the cost of the launch of Columbus. By the way, they have not billed any interest because we are paying 2 years later. So it's, so Node 3 is a very complex system. It is not just a connecting element. It's a very important piece for the space station, which will provide life support, which provide also racks and a lot of systems which will enhance the capabilities of using the space station. And the cupola, and that I am quoting Charlie Bolden, will provide a window for the astronauts from the space station, and I hope that it will be nicer for them to stay 6 months in orbit thanks to the cupola. So 2010 will be a very busy year for ESA, for the space station, because okay, Node 3 and the cupola will be attached to the space station in a couple of days. But we shall have also 2 ESA astronauts flying to the space station. Roberto Vittori, who will fly in July, and next Paolo Nespoli, who will be to the space station at the end of the year for a 6 months mission. And Paolo Nespoli will see the arrival to the space station of the second ATV, Johannes Kepler, who will be launched also by the end of the year. So as you can see, it's a very busy year for ESA for what concerns the ISS. And I would like, since I have thanked NASA to start, I would like to thank the ESA member states for their continuous support to the space station. I must say that the ESA member states, they have made of ESA certainly one of the most reliable partners in the world, and I think that we are very glad to deliver. So, and I am ready, obviously, to ask any question that you can have.
Well, thanks, Sean. Let's see. Talk to you a little bit about the launch tonight, but there's not really much to talk about. The count was unbelievably smooth. It went great. So you saw the end product, which was a really beautiful, spectacular morning launch, and you could really see the vehicle for a long time. I think we had some folks that still had eyes on it at about 7 minutes and 10 seconds when we hit single-engine press to MECO, which, if you consider the fact the main engines are cutting off at about 8 minutes 30 seconds, that's pretty good view. So the cloud cover we thought was there was nice and thin, like we were hoping. So we had a great illustration of the last 2 days of a lot of the reasons why we have the weather rules that we do. And when we get in orbit, that we carry a couple extra days for entry weather. You can just have the weather not do at all what you were thinking. And yesterday was a great example of that. We thought we were going to have a really great day. Turns out we didn't have a very good day at all, but then it started to come back towards goodness at the end. Just never got there good enough. Today overseas at TAL, we talked about our sites at Istris was a really good-looking site today, and we thought we'd have that one in the bank without having to work too hard. And it turns out that one went down pretty fast, and Zaragoza, which had showers predicted on top of it, turns out to not. They didn't come in as fast as they did, so we ended up with one of our 3 good TAL sites, and that's all we needed to be able to launch today. So again, an illustration of some of the challenges of launching with the weather restrictions we have, and then some of the need for those weather rules in the first place. So it all went really well for us at the end, and happy it all came together. Focus a little bit on what we're doing now that we're in orbit. The crew got up there and they did OMS 2. Everything's successful, so we're in a nice, safe orbit. They're going to be setting themselves up for a docking on flight day 3. So after they go to bed today, they'll get up tomorrow, do their inspections of the vehicle, take a look at the thermal protection system and the reentry systems to make sure they're all clean. And then they'll go ahead and dock with the station. And then they get right to work with the node and the cupola. Basically, all 3 EVAs are going to be spent with the node, the cupola, and the PMA. We're going to relocate the cupola to its permanent location, move PMA 3 over, and then basically connect up all the hardware. We're carrying a +1 day on this mission that we can use for a variety of things. We may end up using it to help with some of the regen ECLIS systems or regenerative life support systems, which are permanent home is in Node 3, but some of them are already up in orbit right now, and we would like to move them into their permanent home, but we need to get a little bit of runtime after we deliver some fixes that we're taking up this mission. But you'll see the crew get very busy, get right to work. And the great thing is it's going to be a good example of, again, international partnerships and cooperations between the station crew and the shuttle crew, with the 6-person crew up there and the shuttle crew joining them. Everybody's got their task, everybody's got their job, and you'll see some real peak efficiencies in the way the crew's able to execute. And it's an amazing thing to watch. So I'm looking forward to a really spectacular, successful mission. And with that, I'll let Mike talk to you.
Well, thanks. Let's see. First of all, for Jean-Jacques, we too wish we had launched yesterday, but we got a good launch off today, and we're glad to have you in orbit now. The countdown itself was really, really smooth. Sometimes you have challenging countdowns, and sometimes you have smooth ones. This was one of the smoothest ones ever, and real glad to report that. We took no problem reports during the last 6 hours of the count. Mike mentioned being able to see the orbiter about 7 minutes out. I was one of the fortunate ones that could see it out my windows of the control center. And to put it in context, that was the orbiter was off Cape Hatteras when I finally lost sight of it. So just a fabulous view, special time for the whole team today. Again, just a terrific countdown. The team was very, very energized going into this count. A little disappointed last night with the weather that got us, but
you know, we fought the weather last night. It just was not the right time to launch yesterday. So we stood down, got into it today, and it really rewarded everybody extremely well. So happy to be here, and I'll be glad to answer any questions you may have when you get to it.
Okay, thank you. We have a lot of folks here, so I'd ask you to limit it to one question and a follow-up on the first go-round. Please wait for the microphones, state your name and your affiliation and to whom you're addressing your question. And let's start up front here with Pat.
Pat Duggins, Alabama Public Radio. Frankly, for anyone who would like to take it, it's a cupola question. The astronauts routinely move large pieces of hardware, and comparatively speaking, it looks like the cupola is a little bit smaller. Does that make it different to handle, easier, more difficult, or not at all?
I don't know, Mike,
Yeah, I
you
was
wanna
going to say
start?
from a training perspective and a mass handling perspective, it's probably not much different. It actually we have really good camera views and angles now with all the external cameras that we have. We're going to do with the cupola. It's not going to be that much of a challenge, but the node is a different place than it was supposed to be when we originally baselined the layout of the station. So we are going to do some photogrammetry, which means we're going to take pictures and do some comparisons of clearances to make sure that all the predicts we have on the ground, kind of the as-built, is the same as the as-flown. Mostly with regards to the PMA relocation, not so much the cupola relocation, but from the actual robotic task itself, no, it shouldn't pose any challenge above and beyond anything else they've been doing.
Yeah, I think it's just kind of standard robotic task, and then it's got the uniqueness that it has to have a pressure seal, so we'll have to do the pressure integrity checks, make sure that that's okay, make sure we don't have condensation issues like we do in any laboratory, and then also it's a robotic workstation, so it's going to have, it has some cooling in it for the windows, also some electrical lines that run up to the robotic station so that the crews can then operate the robotic arms through using the window views. So it's not only there for the nice view for the crew, it's there to perform an actual work function, which is to be there for HTV. When it comes up to dock or any of the new commercial vehicles come up, we can get a much better view with the arm when we go out and grapple.
Jim Siegel, Celebration Independent Newspaper. Could you please describe for our viewers a little bit about what the crew did after they came off of the rocket yesterday, what they did before they went to bed? What time did they go to sleep? I assume they missed the Super Bowl. And was there anything else going on kind of interest by the ground crew in preparation for today's launch?
Let's see, from the flight crew perspective, I don't have their schedule in front of me, but basically, after they came off the vehicle after the scrub, they returned to crew quarters and had some downtime basically before they went to bed. I don't recall that they did. I don't think they went out and did any flying on a 24-hour scrub. They usually don't do any of that. So they probably called it an early night and kind of had some time to relax and a chance to go tag back up with their families. And then the morning was a normal standard launch morning where they came up and prepped and got ready. I don't think they had time to sit and watch the Super Bowl, but I think they probably got some reports over the net what the score was. And speaking of the Super Bowl, we had quite a few people in the control center. We were loading our external tank, which is built in New Orleans, at the time the Super Bowl was going on. So while I was getting evil glares for having made them come in, I don't know why it was my fault, right? But made them come in for the Super Bowl, they were at least happy with the results of the game. So I got that going for me.
Chris Gebhardt with NASASpaceflight.com with just a couple curiosity questions. But first off, congratulations on extremely smooth count. That was amazing to watch, and especially with no problem reports in the last 6 hours today. First curiosity question, just the frost. We could clearly see the frost on the tank tonight. And from a standpoint, what are the properties of frost liberation during ascent that makes frost acceptable to have on the tank during liftoff?
Let's see, the frost, frost isn't all that uncommon. It's just a temperature, environmental conditions that make it appear. And then the lighting helps a lot at night when you can see it in the xenons, it kind of glows. So you don't normally see it if we're in a different lighting condition. The frost, you're really looking at really light, fluffy stuff that kind of just forms as soon as we light up and go. There's no mass there to fall off. There's nothing that's debris that liberates. So from a frost perspective, the rules talk about when you're going to get frost and what frost leads to. You're more worried about frost that forms that then masks ice forming either underneath it or on top of it, because it from from the imagery, it makes it harder to detect. But we have really good techniques these days with the ICE team out there, with the IR cameras that we have, and all the high resolution photography we have. They can really zoom in and look exactly where that frost is. We talked about it at several points throughout the count. As each camera angle came up and kind of rotated through the views, some of us in the management room were seeing certain views of the tank we hadn't seen before, and we'd ask the engineering team, hey, does that look like that's growing? And every single time the ICE team actually came back and said that's the same exact condition as it was when we were there, and nothing has changed. There's no growth here, so we didn't have any worries with that. In fact, like I said, the experts who do this every day didn't have any worries whatsoever with the frost.
And for the second question, during the scrub yesterday, there was some talk on the net during the final go no go poll about about someone getting comfortable putting forth a waiver for the RTLS cloud deck limit. Could you just, what was the thought process behind that? I mean, obviously it didn't happen and we were no go for launch, but do you know the thought process behind that?
Yeah, we have, our flight rules cover what we need for RTLS in terms of ceiling and visibility. It's a 4,000 foot or 5,000 foot for RTLS. And then we have range rules for visibility, and those sit at about 4,000 depending on thicknesses of clouds above it. But basically we've always had this slight disconnect between what the range would be go for and what the RTLS landing would be go for, and they're off by about 1,000 feet. And so over the years we've learned to constantly evaluate, if you have a condition that is acceptable for the range but not acceptable for RTLS, what does it take to be acceptable? And each of the pilots go and practice various visibility runs. They learn what they need to have to be comfortable that night, what would be good, what would be bad. And really you're looking for a deck that allows you to gain the horizon as you're rolling around the hack, and you understand clearly where you're at. And last night we had that in the fact that there was nothing above that deck, so clear skies up to that point. And then you look at the thickness of it as you go through it. So you've got a good reference point, you know where you're coming through, you punch through the ceiling really fast so you know you're on your approach path. And once you get through, it's clear and down. The other big factor is what's the wind doing from about 10,000 feet on down, and the workload that then drives the pilot. If all he has to do is pay attention to that glide slope as he comes in, that's a little more acceptable. So we really send the STA up there to fly that path and characterize that for us with the intent of knowing, the rule on the book that you write hard and fast is good, but no exact observation is the exact same thing. And so we send the STA, our shuttle training aircraft, with the astronauts up to go fly that approach and see what it really was. So what we were talking about yesterday was, could we get comfortable with the fact that even though we were a little bit lower than our limits, that we had a good flight? And we were debating back and forth as to how comfortable we really were there, and we just didn't get there on either that or the range yesterday. It just we weren't going to go there.
I just might add a little bit to that, from the launch perspective, and to sum that up a little bit, maybe there were two groups working the weather last night. Flight director out of Houston and the range safety guys here over in Cape Side. Both groups were no-go, and they were both talking about how could they get to go. And so what we heard on the net was that the flight director probably could have gotten there. I never got comfortable at all that the range was going to get there. In fact, we heard no discussion at all about a waiver on the net, and so they were clearly no-go all the way down to T0, and indeed at T0 they were violating their criteria. So as a launch director, you evaluate those things. Even if we'd gotten go on both of those, I would have been hard-pressed to keep going. I thought we were getting to the point where we might have been pressing a little bit too hard. And one of the things that's in my job jar is to make sure we don't get launch fever. I'm not saying we had it last night, but we were probably getting to the point where it was getting kind of close to that issue. So, you listen to that, you listen to the rationale for developing the waiver, and then you ask yourself the hard question, do we really have good reason to go fly tonight, or should we stand down? And, last night we were no-go from a range safety perspective all the way down to T0, so we never really had to implement the prerogative that I have of saying, it's just not a good night to go fly. But we were getting close to that last night, and so I think we probably would have stood down.
Tarek?
Thank you, Tarek Malik with Space.com and Space News. I have one and a follow-up. The first one's from Mike Leinbach. You promised before launch that you expected it was going to be spectacular. I'm just kind of curious, as you watched it fly over Cape Hatteras, was it spectacular? What were your thoughts, knowing this is probably the last night launch that you and your team are going to see, or or have the nation see. If you can kind of expand on that a little bit, that'd be great. Thanks.
Well, it lit up the Kennedy Space Center. I was looking out the windows of the control center and then looking down on the ground to see how bright it gets, and that's a special view. I watched it through SRB separation, saw it very clearly, and then it disappeared behind some clouds, and I got kind of disappointed. But it broke out of those clouds, and that's when I was able to see it all the way out to 7 minutes in flight off of Cape Hatteras. So, for the last night launch, it treated us well. I think everybody appreciated it.
Thanks. And for Mike Moses, I'm just curious, given the scrub yesterday, what your thoughts are on hopefully getting that contingency day or in space, the extension day. Would you still want to use it now, or would you want to save that for weather?
Yeah, we already have the weather contingencies that we need per the rules, so this is a day above and beyond that. And then with the launch only on a second attempt, we actually are carrying some margin in our cryogenic systems that we have about a day extra above and beyond that. So from a consumable standpoint, we look to be in really good shape. And it's way too hard to make the call. We got to get a lot closer to see what the conditions really are, and look at a preliminary forecast for entry before we start deciding, trade off against what other stuff is going on, and is there anything else we need to. So it's way too early to tell. Todd?
Todd Halverson of Florida Today for Mike Leinbach. I think all of us would kind of like to see you do it again. Can you give us a status on Discovery in the next launch campaign and where you are in the flow, and whether you think that March 18th is a good, valid date?
Yeah, I'll just go cut to the chase. March 18th right now looks real good. We're going to roll Discovery out of the OPF on the 11th of February next week. Spend about a week in the VAB like we normally do, and then out to the launch pad on the 18th, and we have a few days of contingency even out the launch pad. So on paper right now, everything looks good, and the ship is behaving. In fact, we could probably even beat rollout by a couple of days if we wanted to. So right now, that next flight is looking really, really good for us.
Thanks. This is Dirk Wagner from German radio, Hessischer Rundfunk. We all had the privilege to go out there and just look at the launch and being sort of awestruck by it. I wonder, perhaps this is for one of the two mics, that question, when's the moment when, because you are so focused on your work during countdown, during liftoff, when is that moment where you can just relieve, breathe out and say, where we did it?
Where we can breathe and say, yeah, we did it. Well, T0 is special when the vehicle jumps off the pad. So we know we're flying at that point. It's that point where we turn control over to the flight directors in Houston, Norm Knight, for this mission. His team did a fabulous job. And we don't celebrate in the control room till we get to orbit, until the main engine's shut down and we know we're safely in orbit. Then the team cheers and celebrates and pets each other on the back, and we're able to go out and party.
We're going to come around to this side of the room and take a few questions, and then we'll get back to James Dean and others on this side. Go ahead.
Hi, Nancy Atkinson from Astronomy Cast and Universe Today. I think you've answered this at a previous press conference, but I can't remember the answer. The covers on the windows of the cupola, do they come off during the mission, and will the crew be able to look out?
Let's see, it launched with a big, we call it MLI, which is an insulation blanket that covers the outside of the cupola. And so that insulation blanket will be pulled off by the EVA crew, and then there's window shade covers that are on each of the windows that'll be individually opened and closed as need be. I don't remember the exact restrictions on use there, but basically, like when the shuttle undocks, those covers will be closed so that there's no impact to degrade the windows, that kind of thing. So yeah, we'll take the hard insulation or the soft insulation covers off that were there for launch, and then they do have permanent covers that they're kind of like a shutter.
I think the shutters will be closed predominantly most of the time, except because they're protecting from micrometeoroid debris damage. So it'll be some event that needs them to be opened, and we'll go open them. And I don't recall if they get opened during this mission or not. It depends, again, I think, on some thermal conditioning and some other things. But I think the crew will very much want to do that. So if it works out from a thermal physics engineering standpoint, they'll be opened, and I'm sure the crew will give us some views.
Ken?
Hi, Ken Kramer from Spaceflight Magazine and the Planetary Society. For Mr. Dordain, could you describe a little bit what the two ESA astronauts will do? And with the extension of the ISS, do you have plan to construct more ATVs to more fully utilize the space station then?
For the two astronauts, Roberto Vittori will be on the shuttle flight, bringing the AMS to the space station. So it will be a short duration flight as part of the shuttle crew. For what concerns Paolo Nespoli, it will be launched by Soyuz at the end of in December, I think, to the space station for a 6 months mission, a long duration mission, and he will be part of the crew of the space station. For what concerns the extension of the ISS, first of all, I would like to say that it's good news for us, and because we were looking for extending the utilization of the space station to make sure that we could reap as many benefits as we could from the investments that the member states have made. So it's good news. Now we have to discuss with the partners what does it mean. Let's say, myself, I would not like that this is just 5 additional years. But more than that, it gives us 10 years of perspective, meaning that we have a chance to think about what we plan to do together on board the space station. And what I would like is to increase the benefits as much as we can, and if possible to decrease the cost. So that this is a discussion that we have to have among the partners. But clearly, since, as you know, we are using ATV to pay our share of the common operation cost, since we are extending the space station, I assume that the common operation cost will increase. If not, I would be glad, I must say, but I am doubtful that the common operation cost will not increase by the extension of the space station utilization, meaning that we shall have to launch more ATVs. That this is, I think, that a result of that. But again, we have to discuss among the partners to see what does it mean to use the space station for 10 years and beyond, because I must say that. Why not thinking? I think that there was the engineers. They have demonstrated that on a purely technical standpoint, the space station can be used to 2025. Okay, we shall see. But 10 years is already a significant time.
Richard Luscombe of The Guardian for Mike Lineback, I think. You've got a pretty busy schedule on the launch pad over the coming months. From what you know so far, how did the launch pad hold up from the launch tonight, and how intense are the inspections? What has to happen on the launch pad to make sure everything's ready for the next launch?
Let's see, I asked the test directors before I left the control center if there was any significant damage to the pad that they could see with the television cameras that we have out there, and they reported none. But of course we haven't had a chance to go out there and walk it down yet to really take a good hard look. Typical damage might be some fire bricks out of the flame trench might come out. Some of the flame deflector concrete material might come off. Those are all very standard repairs. Based on what I saw, I don't think it's going to be a turnaround issue. We always allow a full 8 days between a launch and taking another vehicle out, and we have more than that this time. So if there is any damage out there, I'm sure we'll be able to fix it, unless it's something that we haven't seen before. I don't expect that. We are single pad, obviously, for the remainder of the program, and so if we do sustain something significant, we'd have to deal with that. Being single pad, it's a choke point. But the guys do a great job of maintaining the launch pad, and so I don't foresee any problems there.
Okay, back over here, James Dean.
Thank you, James Dean from Florida Today. I have a question and a follow-up. First for, I think, Mr. Gerstenmaier or Mr. Moses, the foam loss there, I think you said was a foot-long piece from the inner tank, which I think you guys, an area you studied quite a bit last year, and I imagine this might have been one of the tanks that was inspected in that area. But regardless, just wondering, first of all, how do you know that there's no damage that it caused? And second, is it a concern moving forward that you lost a big chunk from that area?
Yeah, you saw the
Yeah,
ice
we-
stuff, so I'll let you.
Yeah, okay, we'll kind of start here, tag team, and work this. I guess, first of all, we didn't see any damage on the orbiter because we got a pretty good view of the orbiter at external tank separation. It was pretty well lit up, and any kind of tile damage would have been pretty obvious to us. So there's no gross damage. There could be some small damage. It was really tough in the video to see where it went. You can watch for it yourself. You can see it come off, bend a little bit, flex a little bit, and then go pretty much straight after. The next frame, it's gone. And that's what we would expect to see. So it doesn't look like it did any damage. In terms of inspection, we did plug pulls, if you remember, on the tanks in various regions to go look. There were critical areas where we were concerned about foam loss. I don't remember if we pulled in this particular area. We'll pull the data and see if we got any information on pulling in this area. If you remember, some of these intertanks were actually manufactured prior to Katrina, so these tanks have been sitting around in storage on the ground for a period of time. Our theory's been that they may have had some surface contamination on them, and then as the foam is sprayed on, that makes a weak bond between the foam and where that surface contamination could be, or the contamination prevents the foam from bonding to the metal on the tank. So we'll continue to probably do our pulls like we've been doing before. We did some extra pulls on this tank to make sure we had done things in the critical regions. We'll probably continue to do the same thing, but we'll let the folks look at it. The data will be very interesting to us. It's going to give us some more insight into the mechanism that's causing the loss. We may be able to confirm the loss and not be so speculative about what the cause is. So in a sense, it's good data. It's good we had the pictures out there. I don't see it as a big deal to us, but we'll continue to work and see what it means. And Mike, anything you'd add?
No, but I was going to say, you mentioned at the beginning that having the really good video of when that event occurred really helps us a lot, because that nails down the time of the event, which they can then plug into the models and backfill in what the heating was, what the pressures were, and try to look at the physics of the mechanism that caused that foam to come off. And that should help us a lot to understand the root cause.
Thanks, and I guess for any of the NASA guys, we've been talking over the past week or so about morale being a little bit down here. Do you think a nice, successful night launch was just what the doctor ordered, or is this something that, is going to be kind of something to wrestle with all year?
I'll take it from the KFC perspective. There was no loss of morale, lack of morale in the control center tonight, let me tell you. I make it a habit to go down to the lobby and talk to folks and congratulate everybody as we're eating our beans and cornbread, which is a tradition of ours. And it was like any other launch. I mean, everybody was ecstatic to get the vehicle off the ground safely and in orbit. So tonight was a great night. We're going to cherish this and look forward to some more.
Todd Halverson of Florida Today for Mike Leinbach or the other Mike. The President's proposed 2011 budget directs NASA to fund development of commercial crew transportation services, and NASA in that case no longer would be a fleet operator. And you guys are operators, and I was wondering what you thought of that idea.
Well, see, on principle, as someone who's, I don't know, been a fan of space all along, reading science fiction, and from the advancement of the world ability to fly into space, I think that's a great thing that we're doing, right? And the more people that we can get involved to do this and do it in different ways and with different ideas is a really good thing to do. There's no reason that just the government should be the one building and operating. It's a very difficult thing to do, and we've learned that by having done it for many years, that it's not as simple as it looks. You can go really high and you can go really fast, but to go really high and fast takes a lot of effort, especially to then come back down from there. So from that standpoint, it's a very challenging task. So it's daunting, and it takes a lot of commitment and resources. So I wish everybody the best of luck, and I think they'll be successful. We need to do our best to make sure they are successful. On a personal note, it's just going to be an evolution. The job function will change, and the world will change. In the short term, obviously, if NASA's not flying something, then they don't need us sitting on console going and operating that vehicle. We're not necessarily done with that business. We might be in an oversight role. We might be lending our expertise. But in a longer-term view of the world, that's going to come back to now. There's a lot more people doing that job. So from that standpoint, I don't feel threatened at all. I can guarantee I have one of the best jobs in the world right now, and next year I won't. So that part's a little sad, but I'll get over that.
Well, let's see, from my perspective, I think Moses has the second best job in the world.
I just wanted the best.
I have the best, and we're gonna fly this out. And we're gonna play the game to the end, as I said the other day. And I wish everybody else, great luck. And it's a challenging business. And if they need some help, maybe they'll come ask a few questions.
We have a question in the front row.
Jim Siegel, Celebration Independent Newspaper. We were here a couple of months ago for the test launch of Ares. What's going to happen to all of that equipment, all of the work, all of the materials that have been developed up till now? Are they going to go in the Smithsonian or what?
Well, we're still going through the process now of figuring out what we want to do with the budget we've got and how we want to move forward with the program. They have a preliminary design review for all their hardware that's scheduled here fairly soon, and I think the idea was to go ahead and at least complete that design review, because that's a good milestone to get all that work documented, get all that activity cataloged and understood, and then that's available then if we want to pick back up in the later, or it could be used for even other programs, and it could be available even to some of the commercial folks that we talked about here. So we'll take maximum advantage of what we got. We've got a lot of time to kind of plan what we want to do next, and we'll be working that over the next several months to figure out exactly what we do with the equipment, hardware, and process. Can we use them in some other ways? Can we do some other things, gain some information from them? Can we make them available to other folks that are doing activities that will help them go ahead and advance? So we got plenty of time to go work it, and we'll do the right thing once we figure out exactly where things are heading in the next couple months.
Pat?
Pat Duggins again, Alabama Public Radio. Building on that, and this is really looking down the road. I recall there was some sorrow on the part of some NASA astronauts that when the Mir space station was deorbited, there was no way to bring any of it back to put in the Smithsonian or whatever like that. And ISS obviously has got some life left in it. But before the final shuttle mission goes, has any thought been given to bringing back anything from it, bits, pieces that could wind up for the public to see?
I don't think there's any thought really of bringing back any pieces. The big thing the shuttle does allows us to return scientific research activities, and we'll continue to bring back a lot of stuff on those last missions of the shuttle for that fact. But I don't think there's no intent of changing the major configuration of station. We've kind of got the flights laid out. We know what supplies we need to take up. We know what components need to be there. And then as Jean-Jacques said, our challenge now is we have this great 10-year window that we can look at. So now we can really plan how we want to utilize the space station. So before, we thought of space station predominantly maybe as a research facility for scientific activities. We now know that the station can be used to do Earth observation, for example. There's a spectrometer on space station now that actually imaged Haiti and got some pictures of the Haiti disaster. It was able to look at the coastal water off the coast of Haiti in a multispectral sense that'll provide some information for folks. So station can be used for Earth observation. It can also be used very much as an engineering test bed. There's been a lot of talk about cryogenic depots where we would store fuel on orbit. We could go ahead and do some demonstrations, actually store fuel on orbit. There's lots of talk about new thrusters, ion thrusters, other types of propulsion that can also be tested on space station. So now is the chance for this next period to actually think how we can operate station and learn as much as we can and put together real intricate plans. And we can also do it internationally, which is another unique aspect. So if our researchers have common interest with Europeans, we can jointly come together with their resources and ours to actually go utilize stations. So instead of worrying about what we're going to bring back, I think Jean-Jacques and I think about 10 years and how can we get the teams to maximize the usage out of this 10 years and really bring some value out of the station, because it can be a game changer. It can teach us how to use the unique aspects of space for the benefit of all of us here, and that's what we want to do over these next couple of years.
Ken?
Hi, Ken Kramer again. First, I just want to say congratulations and thank you for your professionalism, your hard work, and a wonderful experience for this night launch. For Mr. Rodin, I'd like to follow up on the ATV. Now, you indicated that you may well make more of them. With the extension of the space station, you've discussed modifying it. So does this give you now more incentive to modify ATV for down mass, as well as perhaps make a manned capsule out of it, since NASA will not have a way to reach the station with a manned capsule anymore? And what's the prospect for the Soyuz down in South America, using that as a manned launcher?
Okay, there are several questions. Okay, I shall try. Maybe to complete what I said before, because I would like to recall that the flight of Roberto Vittori is a flight of the Italian Space Agency. We are providing an ESA astronaut, but this is in the framework of the Italian Space Agency NASA Corporation. But coming back to your station, to your question, I must say that as Bill was saying, the space shuttle, the last shuttle flights will be used to bring back as much as possible of scientific payload, and this is just a fact that when the shuttle is retired, the download capabilities, the Russians, they are providing a lot of upload, including crew, but download, it's only for the crew, not for the cargo. This is on the Russian side. Now, obviously, the commercial services, there are plans for that, but as you said, we are today making a detailed definition of a modification of the ATV to modify the ATV and try to develop cargo download capability with the ATV, and that this is something that we have to discuss among the partners. Obviously, what I would like is that these cargo download capabilities that Europe could develop is required by all partners. It cannot be just a cargo download capabilities to satisfy the European requirements. So this is one of the many topics that I would like to discuss among the partners, is that which are the cargo download capabilities that we have in front of us for the next 10 years. And again, extending to 10 years gives the perspective for that. And if we conclude collectively, the 5 partners, that there is room for an interest, common interest, for a cargo return capability developed in Europe, I think that after that I have just to convince the member states of ESA. But the starting point is to have from all partners a requirement for cargo download capability. And this is the type of discussion that I would like to have among the partners. And this is what I have called many times a common transportation policy, to see if we can agree on which are the requirements that we have in front of us, which are the assets that each partner have, and how we can optimize the use of the assets that each partner can bring to the transportation requirements. And this includes also standard interface. We have not yet standard interface among the partners. Just to say that the ATV can only dock to a Russian docking port, I must say that this is a limitation. Because let's assume that for whatever reason the Russian docking port is not available. It's a pity to have an ATV not able to be docked to another docking port. So standard interface is also very important. So this is the interest of having a 10 years perspective, because we can be, as I said, much smarter to see how we can better use the space station in the next 10 years. And any progress that we would make together to better use the space station is a progress that we shall make for exploration also, because any progress that which is made there is a step towards a common exploration. So this is and that we have the definition studies of the cargo return vehicle. For what concerns crew transport, we have no plan for the time being. And there is no plan for what the Soyuz is concerned from French Guiana. The Soyuz in French Guiana is only for let's say satellites. Obviously, when we because the launch pad is now almost ready for the first launch to take place this year, we have made sure in constructing the launch pad that we are not introducing any obstacle for a potential extension for human space flight, but that's all. So, but there is no plan for any human space flight by Soyuz from French Guiana. So that it's not yet in any plan in Europe. Cargo return is part of the plans. Yes.
But you have had discussions on.
Hang on just a minute, Ken.
You have had discussions on ATV. You don't have a plan, but you have discussed the potential for a manned capability, right?
Yes, but as soon as you have a cargo return capability, you can return to the Earth, and when you can return to the Earth, you have we have a lot of capabilities in Europe for pressurized module and life support. Let's say 50% of the pressurized part of the International Space Station is made in Europe. So we can say that we have industrial capabilities in Europe for pressurized module and life support. So when you have capabilities for pressurized module and life support on one side, when you have capabilities to return safely on Earth, I am not saying that the step is easy, but you have the bricks to evolve towards a crew transportation vehicle. And this is the reason why, okay, we have a launcher, a reliable launcher, Ariane 5. We have capabilities for pressurized module and life support, and if we have capabilities to return safely on Earth, we have the most important bricks to evolve towards the crew transportation. But does not make a crew transportation, and it does not make a plan, and that we are not yet there.
Stefano.
Yes, Stefano Coledan for Italy's News 24 state-owned TV. For Mr. Dordain, actually, I really want to ask you this. Has ESA thought or asked NASA if it is interested in using the Ariane 5 as a vehicle to launch whatever spacecraft the United States may build eventually?
It's part of what I have said on the common transportation policy. I think that all the partners, they have capabilities. United States, they have their capabilities, and they are very well known. The Russians, they have their capabilities. The Japanese, they have their capabilities. And Europe, we have our capabilities. And again, this is reliable capabilities. Now, there was not so far any discussion among the partners on how can we share these capabilities to make a transportation scenario which could take the benefit of all the transportation existing among the partners. And that discussion, let's say, was not useful if the space station was stopping in 2015, because it would have been too late. Again, the perspective of 10 years offers that the window, as Bill was saying, to discuss on that. So there is no plan from NASA to use Ariane 5 so far, but Ariane 5 exists and works well. Now we have to discuss again with all partners, not only with NASA. I think that the partnership is 5 partners. We have to discuss and to see how we can make the best use of Ariane 5.
Yes, in fact, I was wondering, I mean, Ariane 5 was built man-rated with the Hermes in mind. So that's one other reason why I was asking the question.
Yes, no, Ariane 5 has been designed primarily for Hermes. And when you look at Ariane 5, it's clearly a launcher which has been designed for low Earth orbit. Let's say it looks like the shuttle in terms of propulsion. And this is the reason why we had to modify Ariane 5 and to have a much more powerful upper stage for GTO orbit. So yes, Ariane 5 has been designed for low Earth orbit and has been designed to launch crew. It was at the time of Hermes, and let's say Hermes has had the fate of the Constellation program. Hermes has been terminated in '92. So We know what means a transition, by the way, in Europe. So yes, Ariane 5 has been designed to launch crew. But again, there is a gap between design and qualified for human spaceflight. So Ariane 5 is a reliable launch vehicle, designed to launch crew. But it cannot launch crew just like that, because it will require some modification, and especially escape systems and so on. So we are not yet there, and but Ariane 5 exists, and it's a good launcher. Okay, let's discuss with the other partners of what can be the best use of our assets, and we shall see.
Okay, any last questions before we go? All right, with that, we'll wrap it up. And a reminder that you can keep track of all of the mission activities from STS-130 live on NASA television all the way through Wheel Stop on February 20th at 10:01 p.m. right back here at Kennedy Space Center. You can also keep track of the mission on the web at www.nasa.gov/shuttle. And we'll head now back to Mission Control in Houston. Thank you.